Hello and welcome to this first tutorial in the series of Unity tutorials. If you have not yet watched my disclaimer, please do so in order to know what to expect and what not to expect of this series. The task set before us is to create a medieval RPG. So the first tutorials will revolve all around setting up the scene, setting the mood for our game, so we can continue on with more detailed tutorials. So in this session we will set up a new project, new scene, and we will set up our terrain, then add some textures and assets just to make it look like something. So first off, I'm using Unity 5.2.3. Create a new project. I'm gonna call this RPG. And the first thing I do in this new project is to import a terrain. So there we go. And as we look at this terrain, thinking of an RPG, this gives us a few problems. First of all, our terrain is, as you can see, quite flat. So if you've used Unity before, you know there are sculpting tools to change that. But since the terrain is quite large, this is a task that can take quite long if it's supposed to look like something. So this is the first problem we're going to tackle. Another problem we got is that our terrain is one big square, and if we're gonna put our hero in the middle of that square, then all he will see is a big square he's standing on. So that it doesn't look really like an RPG game world. It doesn't look like, doesn't feel like an open world at all. So somehow we need to try to create some bounds for our hero that he cannot cross, which will give him the impression that he is actually within an open world, but is limited to not just go anywhere he wants. So first things first, we're gonna start with raising our whole terrain. I'm gonna do that because later on I want to add some rivers in a bit of a dirty way. Yeah, you'll understand once we do that why we now need to raise everything. So I'm just gonna make a little pike here on my map, and I use now biggest brush size, biggest opacity, switch over to the paint height tool. This tool works in a way that if you hold shift and press your mouse button, you sample the height, like you see that height value over here. So I'm looking for something around 20. This looks fine to me. And then I just, as I said, use the largest brush size and opacity just to quickly be able to raise our entire terrain. So what we want to do with the river, there are probably better ways to do so. Could write a script to generate it, or could model a river mesh, but that would all take quite long and I might not even be able to do so. So this is how we're gonna do it for now. Yeah, as you can see, our terrain is now floating above world level. That's great. Okay, the next thing I want to do is just to add some noise to our terrain, because it's right now way too flat for being a cool RPG world. So we're switching back to the raise terrain tool. I'm using this brush, feel free to use a different one, and I just, actually opacity 100 is quite daring. Yeah, I just brush over our terrain with it to add some noise. So something like that. So and as I said in the beginning, I want to try to create some bounds for our hero. One way I'm gonna do this is to create a mountain range in the back. So, but we'll get to that later in more detail. The next thing I want to do, since this is not really looking awfully pretty, I want to stretch out everything. So we go to the terrain settings. Here you got a terrain width and length, and we change this from 500 to 2000. And there we go. We get our terrain stretched out, and as the terrain stretches, the height map stretches as well, and everything that was quite spiky before is now more smooth, more spread out, and yet we still don't have a flat land to walk on. So I go back to the raise terrain tool and just want to get my mountain range back. So the idea behind this is that our hero will not be able to climb this mountain range. He will not be able to jump on it. Yeah, if you later on want to add a feature where your hero can fly, you got to think about something there, but I'm not planning on that. Sorry for all Flying Heroes fans. But yeah, I'm not planning on that, so I'm fine with this solution. So let's just see. I also gotta watch my height, since this is now fairly big in size. If you put, later on we will put a little hero in there, you will see how massive this whole terrain is. So it's easy to lose sight of the proportions. So here we did that already. I'm here at 500 total height. That is too much. So I'm gonna go back to the lower terrain tool and quickly just brush over it to get our mountain range a bit lower. So let's sample that height again. 200 something. That's still quite high, but I'm gonna leave it at that for now. We can adjust that later on. What I want to have though is a bit of corner in here and here as well. So, and now I want to set a plateau over here and one over here. And again, we just need to watch the height and the size of the whole thing. I think, yeah, something like that would be fine. I put my brush size on 34 and opacity on 100. So, okay. This is my plateau, and I want to have a second one a little bit lower, so I'm going to do that here. So, yeah, something like that. And another thing I want to do later on is have a waterfall going down in between those two plateaus. So I start that one here, and the waterfall needs to fall, so we need to have a bit lower terrain around. And I just sampled a lower height, so something like that. Just get the edge going on this side. Yeah, so that looks already bit like it. Actually, this whole area is still a bit too high. I'm just gonna carefully lower it all. I just don't want this to be as high as the plateaus. Yeah, Okay, there we go. That already looks a bit better than when we started. So the next thing I want to do is create another boundary for our hero. This will for now cover all the other 3 sites, and in order to do so we're gonna, oh sorry, not go to the asset store, wrong call. I want to import a package. This is one of Unity's standard assets. So I go to assets, import package, environment. So in this package you'll find some textures, some prefabs for trees, for grass, different things, and also some water. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to create a bit of an ocean around this area. Yeah, the idea is to have maybe something like a beach here in this, or yeah, here on this side, and yeah, I'm not sure yet what to do about the other sides, but we're not that far yet. So I've imported the package. Here it is, standard assets, and under environment, water 4 prefabs, I'm going to use water 4 advanced. There are different waters you can try. I've used this so far and I'm quite happy with it. It's just a bit too small, so I scale it up on the X and the Z axis to 100. On the Y axis, I'm gonna leave it as it is right now. Otherwise, if we look at it from this point of view and I add this up to 100, we get actually quite the waves, and I do not want this for now. So with pressing W I can move it around, or here the move tool, and yeah, again we don't need our entire ocean to be behind the mountains, since our hero is not supposed to look over them anyways. But to all other sides it would be important to just evenly spread it out, and I want to keep it beneath the surface of our terrain. So remember, in the beginning we leveled up our entire terrain, and now we get the benefit of it. If I go back to terrain, raise lower tool, now I'm going to use a fairly small brush size, what a word, and opacity 40. I hold shift and lower the terrain, and voila, there we have the cheap river I was speaking about, dirty river. As I said, there are different ways to tackle problems in Unity. This is just a cheap and easy way, and should be sufficient for now. So yeah, just gonna finish that later at some point. For now, it just is meant to prove the point that we can create rivers like that easily. Okay, this already looks alright. Better than a flat square, at least. So one thing we're missing, obviously, are textures. So that's the next thing I want to do. There is here a paint texture tool. We have no textures defined yet, so I click on edit texture, add texture, and as I said, the environment package from Unity holds textures. The one I'm going to use is Mud Rocky Albedo, since it offers a normal map. I set the tiling to 2525, the tile size, sorry, in order to avoid that on areas like this you see the tiling too obviously. I mean, of course, if we zoom out, you clearly see the tiling, especially in flat areas, but if you're standing here, it should be much better. And now we see the benefit of first creating all that noise on the terrain and then stretching it out. It just makes our entire terrain uneven, and all those irregular shapes give us help to hide the tiling of the texture to some extent. Of course, it's not perfect, but we're not going to just stick with one texture. Actually, as a matter of fact, we're just going to add some more. So this time we really go to the asset store and look for outdoor ground textures. I'm only going to use 3 assets in this tutorial series, so everybody can follow along. So importing always takes a while. Still, I want to go ahead and already look for another set of textures. This artist is great, has lots of assets in the asset store, and if you click the nice little price button, you'll see that there are actually lots of assets for free. There are some objects, bombs. We won't need any bomb right now. Yeah, like textures and materials, plants, lots of cool stuff happening here. And from my point of view, in a quite good quality. So we're going to use the free ground materials. I'm going to import that package as well. So what I'm trying to do now is just to equip you with some textures so you can go all wild between the tutorial sessions. I'm just going to show a little bit what I'm thinking about, but I'm actually not an artist at all. I'm not a designer, so it will probably not look all that great. You can do it better and spend more time on it. So all these materials we've imported now actually give us a diffuse map, diffuse texture in normal map, which is great. It just gives the scene more depth. So we're gonna add another texture, and now if we click on select, we got a problem that there's lots of diffuse textures and lots of normal maps, so that is not gonna work with selecting it this way. So we're gonna go to the folder ground textures pack, and let me have a look. Yeah, this one looks alright. So I'm using here diffuse texture and the normal map. I leave the tiling at 15 for now. Actually, this one I want to bump it up as well to 25. And just want to add another one right away from the first package we imported. Here I'm gonna use ground 3 diffuse and normal. I'll leave the tiling here. The tile size, sorry about that. And yeah, I'm gonna start with this one. Just use a bit of a bigger brush size. If you have your first texture set and you want to paint over it with another texture, unless you are whatever, this is brown dirt and you want some metal or wood or something, what is not supposed to look like dirt at all, then of course you can leave settings as they are. If you want to blend your textures, it's actually helpful to reduce the target strength somewhat. So even if you press, let me just use this texture for that. Even if you keep it pressed, you will never entirely paint over the underlying texture. Here now I got it to 0.5, so you can see I can keep on pressing as I want to, like this. It just doesn't erase the texture underneath. So I'm gonna use this for just add some randomness. So I'm just gonna do this really quickly. It's not gonna look like a real mountain range or something. Oh yeah, just want to give you a starting point to work with as you create your amazing RPG terrain. So yeah, that already looks more random, if there's something to look for. And yeah, I just want to cover our 2 plateaus with the other texture. Maybe just also change the strength a bit. Also for those parts, it's maybe nice to have a bit of variety in target strength. So yeah, well, yeah, it's not awfully pretty yet, but it looks definitely better than our flat white square. So with that, I'm at the end of our first session. In the next part of creating the mood of our game, we're gonna add some more assets to make it more look like an RPG. Bring in our hero as well and have a look how massive our terrain actually is. So thanks for watching and see you next time.